and share my screen. Okay. Hi, everyone. So we will just wait a minute or two and see as people come in. Thanks everyone for joining.
Hi, Kasha.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so glad I could make it today.
Oh, me too.
Hi, Champion and Michelle.
Hi, Prof. How are you?
Good, good. And how are you?
I'm fine. Thank you.
Hello,
Hi, Michelle.
how are you?
Good, good. And how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Great. Should we get started?
Amanda?
We can.
Hi, Amanda.
Hi, yes. Kalisha, you can start. I think we already agreed that maybe 5 minutes within this, people can find us.
Okay.
I will just be admitting in people, right? I'm sure you
Yeah.
can start.
Yeah, okay. Great. Well, thank you everyone for joining today. I'm very excited to be presenting the results, some preliminary results from my dissertation work. And we've entitled this work, I feel like it's asking if he's a stalker, but I also feel like it's asking if he cares. Exploring South African youth's perceptions of the sexual relationship power scale. And I'm very happy to be presenting alongside two of the interviewers that have been helping to do this work. So I'll first pass it to Campion and then Michelle to introduce themselves quickly.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Campion Sharima, and I'm a PhD student at the School of Public Health at the Wits University. And I've been working at PHRU since 2019, which is where I joined Kalisha's project last year in November. And I'm happy to have everyone to listen to the presentation today. Thank you and welcome.
Michelle, you're on mute.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michelle, and I joined PHRU last year as well. And that's when we started working on Kalisha's project around November. It's been a new experience for me because I just completed my honors degree in public health, and corporate has been a new experience, but Kalisha has made it a lot easier and pleasant. Yeah, and I'm very excited to be here today. Thank you for the opportunity and welcome everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. And my name's Kalisha Clausen, and I'm a PhD candidate at the University of British Columbia. And I'm actually currently in Vancouver, Canada right now. So those of you who are joining from South Africa, it's the afternoon, and it's currently 7 in the morning for those of us who maybe were brave enough to wake up this early here in Vancouver. All right, so today, the learning objectives for this talk are at the conclusion of the activity, participants will be able to define and explain sexual relationship power in their own words, recognize and summarize different elements of validity evidence, define cognitive interviewing and discuss how cognitive interviewing can be used to inform measurement development and the validity of measures, and finally, criticize and critique existing measures of sexual relationship power. So I've included this timeline to demonstrate that what I'm going to be presenting today is accumulation of work and longstanding collaborations, and that I couldn't be where I am today without all my colleagues and the hundreds of young people who have graciously participated in our research. I want to acknowledge that I'm extremely grateful to have been able to travel back and forth to South Africa numerous occasions over the last few years before COVID to conduct this research. And in Canada, the land itself has been colonized similarly to many places in the world, including South Africa. And so in Canada, when we present on our lands, we often acknowledge that these lands, who they originally for, and that they've been impacted by colonialism. So I am an uninvited settler, with Western European heritage, and I'm very privileged to work, live, and play on the traditional unceded, meaning so never kind of given up or had any treaty and ancestral territory of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. And so for those who were able to attend last year, when I presented this work to the group, I mostly focused on a systematic review and a quantitative data analysis that is now published. And today, I'm very excited to talk through some of the qualitative work from my dissertation that I've been working alongside Campion and Michelle at the Perinatal HIV Research Unit, as well as folks at the Maternal, Adolescent, and Child Health Research Unit, or MRU, in Durban. So as a background, this research is very focused on this sexual relationship power scale. And so this scale has been frequently used in research centered on gender and power and health, and was originally developed in the US among about 380 women who were mostly married at the time. The original scale has two subscales intending to measure relationship control and decision-making dominance. And so relationship control or controlling behavior includes a range of acts designated to make a person subordinate or dependent by isolating them from sources of support, exploiting their resources and capacity for personal gain, depriving them of means needed for independence, resistance, and escape, and regulating their everyday behavior. And decision-making dominance is engaging in behaviors against a partner's wishes or the ability to control partner's actions. While originally developed among women in the US, the scale has been adapted to understand young men's controlling behaviors and has been used in numerous global settings and has been associated with important health behaviors and outcomes, including HIV incidence among young women in South Africa. However, the ways in which the scale is used, the number of items and the wording of the items across studies has been inconsistent. And while numerous studies in South Africa have used versions of the scale for use among youth, there's limited evidence on the adaptation and validation process for how the sexual relationship power scale was adapted for South African youth. And this presents challenges for study comparison and program evaluation, as it's unclear if the sexual relationship power scale is accurately measuring and capturing power dynamics within young South African men and women's relationships. So last time I presented this group, as I mentioned, I focused on objective 1 of my dissertation, and today I'll be presenting some preliminary results for the remaining 2 objectives. So objective 2, to explore and compare validity evidence of the scale and to gain novel insight into how relationship dynamics function in the lives of young men and women in the modern era. For my PhD, I'm using elements of a larger study entitled Ayazazi. So Zazi meaning knowing themselves in Zulu, and Aya standing for adolescents and young adults, is a youth-centered, multidisciplinary, prospective cohort study that focused on sexual and reproductive health and rights and began in November 2014, following 425 youth for 12 months in Durban and 18 months in Soweto. Ayazazi and all of the subsequent sub-analyses and sub-studies is guided by a youth engagement framework, which prioritizes youth-friendly spaces and provides opportunities for young people to be meaningfully involved in all steps of the research process. So you can see in the table here that the different elements that youth underwent at each study. And at the 6-month study visit, the sexual relationship power scale was added. In order to meet objective 2 and 3, I'm using quantitative survey data from the 6-month follow-up visits and then the qualitative data, which Michelle and Campion have been helping with. And we've just finished all of the interviews. So there's been 37 of them. And participants were purposefully sampled as best as we could from the 6-month questionnaire. And 37 past participants participated in this research in cognitive interviews that aim to understand the perceptions of the items in the sexual relationship power scale. So the results from the objective 1 of my dissertation are now published. So this is the systematic review that we published, and there's also a quantitative analysis that's been published as well on this topic. And both of these have really informed the remaining objectives of my dissertation. And so objective 2, to explore and compare validity evidence of the scale among young South African men and women, is really aiming to understand construct validity of the scale. Construct validity is an ongoing process and an essential component of measurement. Multiple sources of evidence are needed to ensure that measures used within questionnaires accurately measure the construct of interest. So in this paper that's referenced at the bottom of the slide, Messick discusses that there are 6 distinguishable aspects of construct validity. Objective 2 will aim to address 4 of these through 4 sub-objectives. And for the purpose of this presentation, I won't be talking about objective 2A and B, but this work has been published on the quantitative analysis in +1. And it evaluated the internal structure and the relation to other variables, which addresses external aspect of reliability. The presentation today will focus on the qualitative aspect of the study and objectives 2, C, and D, which C will look at response process, which assesses substantive process and response consistencies, and scale content. And for my dissertation, these sub-objectives are going to be in 2 different chapters. So for objectives 2, C, and D, we are using the qualitative data from the cognitive interviews. So 37 interviews have been completed, 12 that were done before COVID and 25 after. And these were done among previous participants and at both sites in Durban and Soweto. During the interviews, youth were asked to participate in a think aloud procedure, which aimed to assess the cognitive processes in responding to items in the sexual relationship power scale. Cognitive interviews also used probing to ask participants a series of questions related to items, including, what is your understanding of item X? For objective 2D, within interview analyses, we'll examine participants' responses across questions in order to understand consistencies in responses and to draw meaning of the construct of sexual relationship power across all questions. Between interview analyses, we'll consider how results, interpretations, and patterns are similar across individuals. And between group analyses, we'll consider how responses differ or are similar within and across distinct groups. So for example, we'd be looking at differences among younger versus older young women and young women versus young men. So here are the items in the sexual relationship power scale. And as you can see here, we've asked them slightly differently for young women and young men. And so I want to ask the audience here if you could go to the top of your screen, there's a feature called annotate. So if you click on that, you can actually write on the presentation. And so I'm hoping that you can think about your own relationships or young people's relationships that you know, and for each item, write. So if you're a woman, you can write for the young women. If you're a man, you can write for the young men. Write how relevant you think this item is to your relationship on a scale of 1 to 10. So not whether you agree or disagree with it, but how relevant you think this item is in your relationship. So I'll give everyone about a minute to do that. So again, if you bring your mouse to the top of the screen, there's a feature called annotate, and you can draw or use text to put in a number between 1 and 10. So 1 being not relevant at all, and 10 being the most relevant. Great, I'll give about 30 more seconds. Awesome. So I'm going to save that. Thank you for participating in that. And I hope that it gives you a chance to kind of take a good look at what the items are that we have included in this scale. And now I'm going.
Where did people get the nice numbers? Because I've been trying with my handwriting.
There's a way to use a text instead of draw. You can write text.
Oh. Thank you. I'll look for that one next time.
All right, I'm going to clear it so we don't see these numbers for the rest of the presentation. All right. So now we're going to talk about the responses and what participants said about why they answered this scale the way they did. And so participants were asked each of the items I just showed you and asked to say strongly agree to strongly disagree, and then why, and then we're probed to kind of ask why they answered that way. And just to show you here, this is the responses that we got at the quantitative survey in IAZAZI, so both at 6 months and at 12 months. So just to show you here, but we don't have time today to present all the responses across all items, but we want to take you through some of the findings. And so we've picked some items to go through and discuss, and Michelle and Campion are going to be helping me present some of these results. And so for each of the items, I'll show you that how across the qualitative and 6 month and 12 months at the quantitative responses, how this differed for young women. So on the left side here is the young women, and for young men. And so for item 1, my partner is quite comfortable when I greet men I know, is how it was asked to young women. And I'm comfortable when my partner greets men she knows, was the way it was asked for young men. For item 2 is my partner expects me to be home when he comes to check on me, and it bothers him if I'm not there, was how it was asked to young women. And then I expect my partner to be home when I come to check her. It bothers me when she's not there, for young men. And now I'm going to pass it to Michelle to talk about this item.
Okay, so basically there was a question asked to the participants, the female participants, and the question or the statement posed was, my partner expects me to be home when he comes to check on me. So we can see on the graphs, there was 50% of women who responded in agreement. So they stated that they agree or strongly agree. And then 50% showed that they disagree or strongly disagree. For those who agreed, their main reasoning was that the partner communicated about coming over, and the partner expects them to be home or tell them if they aren't home. One of the quotes that stood out among the people or the participants that agreed was that a participant said, every time he calls me, he expects me to be by my house. If I'm not home, he asks me a lot of questions why I am not at home. Among those who disagreed, the main reasons were that the partner wouldn't just show up unannounced, or that he knows that she is busy. A quote that came up from a participant was that this question is for married people, but even a husband does not have that right to do that. Haibo, we are not married. He cannot expect to find me in the house whenever he comes to check on me. Haibo, I'm 22. I have my own life that I should live. He should not do that at all. Campion?
All right, so for the male participants for the same question, the question was, I expect my partner to be home when I come check her. And as you can see, 69% of the men either agreed or strongly agreed with that, and 31% either disagreed or strongly disagreed. And for those who agreed, the reason was, it's only if they had made plans with their partners in advance. So therefore, if they wouldn't find them, then that would be wasting time on their part. And one of the quotes from those participants who agreed was, yes, I agree with the question because I would like my partner to be at a place when I come to check her, because because I only come to visit her when I have informed her that on a particular day and time, I will come and check you at your place. And then when I eventually do come and then she is not there, then it becomes problematic for me, because now she's wasting my time, wasted money to travel from my place to her place, only for me not to find her at her place. So that becomes problematic. And for the participants who disagreed, particularly the reason was that she doesn't need to report to them. And so they felt like it wasn't necessary to actually to be concerned with not finding them. And they would understand that the participant is busy. And one of the quotes from that was, she does not have to report to me all the time. She's not or we are not in some marriage or something. And then laughing in quotes, of course. She's just my partner. So for the participants who disagree, they felt like it wasn't that much of an important issue to check on the partners and not find them. It was just a matter of just understanding that she either might have other plans which do not concern him, and so they didn't find it very concerning. Back to you, Kalisha.
Great. So for the next item, you can see here that the women were more likely to agree at all 3 of the the interviews and then young men. And I will pass it to Michelle to explain the responses.
Okay, so for this particular item, the question asked for females was that my partner gets jealous when I wear things that make me look too beautiful. 50% of women responded that they agree or strongly agree, and then 50% said that they disagree or strongly disagree. Among those who agreed, mainly said their main reasons was that the partner doesn't like them wearing revealing clothing. Excuse me. One of the quotes that came out from there was, "No, it's my body, not our body. Yes, he has to admire me when I am beautiful, but not be jealous. He needs to grow up." And then among those who said that they disagree or strongly disagree, their responses was that my partner encourages them, their partner encourages them to be beautiful. The partner doesn't get a say in what type of clothing that they wear. So one of the quotes from a participant was that he tells me, "You look beautiful, but I do not like you wearing this thing when you're not with me." You know, he wants me to always be with him. Campion.
Okay, from the male participants, the question was, I become jealous when my partner wears things that make her look too beautiful. And from the responses, 31% of the men did agree or strongly agree with the statement, and about 69% of them disagreed or strongly disagreed. But there was a small challenge with the interpretation of beautiful, or too beautiful rather. And for those who agreed particularly, they agreed if beautiful was interpreted as revealing, and sometimes it would be vague for them because they wouldn't understand if it meant just wearing short clothes or tight clothes, or just generally appearance, like looking beautiful as a person themselves. So there was quite a confusion there. But one of the quotes from the participants who did agree was, they said, I somewhat agree, because there's a fine line for women today. There's a fine line between looking beautiful and them exposing themselves, like showing off their bodies in a sense. So I'm not comfortable when she shows off. So I'm not comfortable when she shows off her body, but I am comfortable when she looks beautiful. So clearly you can tell that this person is working with two definitions of the word beautiful here, according to them. And for those who disagreed, one of the major reasons was that they felt that they should be proud and happy that their partner is dressing or is looking beautiful. And one of the quotes from that was, well, my response would be a question: why would I be jealous if my partner looks good? So for those who disagreed, it was mainly just, one issue, as opposed to those who agreed, who had different interpretations of what it means to be too beautiful. Back to you, Kalisha.
So for the fourth item, my partner has more to say about important things that affect us both, was asked for young women, and then I have more to say about decisions that affect us both, for young men. And you can see that it's slightly equal, but maybe for the qualitative men responses, there was a bit more agreeing over all of the different levels here. And I'll pass it back to Michelle.
Okay, so for this item, when females were asked the following question, my partner has more to say about important things that affect us both. 35% stated that they agree or strongly agree with the statement, and then 65% stated that they disagree or strongly disagree. Among those that agreed, so which is the 35%, their main reasoning was that my partner makes money, so also most of the decisions. So this particular item was attached to finances. So decision making was attached to how much financial power and capacity the partner has. One of the quotes was that because right now he is the one working, so he thinks he is the man. And then among those that disagreed, which is the 65%, the main reasons, or some of the themes that came up was communication is 50-50. One partner shouldn't be making decisions. So one of the quotations from an interview that came up was, strongly disagree, because sometimes when it's pertaining him or us, he always wants my input. He always values my input in things that happen. Like it would be a simple cell phone contract that he wants to take for himself, and he will say, I'm thinking about doing this and that, and I would say, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, it's your money. But he always wants me to know he is going to do this and that, and that and that and that. Yeah, Campion.
Okay, so for the male participants, the question was, I have more to say about decisions that affect us both. And 60% obviously did agree and strongly agreed, whereas 40% disagreed or strongly disagreed. And for the men who agreed, the main reasoning was that men should make the decisions, and even though they did somehow express that there's some equal decision-making power, they still went on further to claim that, even if we had equal power to make decisions, I'll still have kind of the final decision at the end. So they're the ones who talk more, and so most of the time they'll obviously make decisions. And one of the quotes from that was, most of the time it happens because as a Zulu guy, I believe that a man should be the one who takes important decisions that affect the relationship. Obviously using cultural identity to justify why this should be the case. And for the participants who disagreed, they thought that decisions should be made together, and that since they are not married, it's important that they have these decisions made together. And one of the quotes from the responses were, so we have to share, it says, so we have to share the decisions together because it affects the both of us. And secondly, I haven't married with her, so I cannot dictate and tell her this is what you need to do, and then we have to agree. At the end of the day, we need each compromise our personal things in order to make our relationship work. So the justification for this case is that since we're not married, the decision that's pretty much for the two of us to make. I think that would also imply that in the case where they're married, then maybe the dynamics may change, but that still is unclear with regards to that part. Back to you, Kalisha.
So for the fifth one, my partner never tells me who I can spend time with for young women, and I never tell my partner who they can spend time with. So you might notice that this item is worded slightly differently than the rest of the items, where it's almost a double negative when you're asking this item and having participants agree or disagree to it. It seems a bit like a double negative, and so this sometimes confused participants, and particularly for the male participants, we found that they almost didn't hear the word never, and so it's a bit unclear, particularly when we're looking at the quantitative data, when participants would have been answering if with the never there as part of the statement or without. And so this was often an issue of confusion. For item 6, I can leave our relationship anytime that I wanted for females, and it might make me sad, but my partner is free to leave our relationship anytime she wants. So generally there was quite a lot of agreement across both men and women in all 3 of the interviews. And I'll pass it to Michelle.
Okay, so for this question, the female participants were asked, or they got given this statement: I can leave our relationship anytime I wanted. So 20% said that they disagree or strongly disagree, and then 80% of the participants said that they agree or strongly agree. Among those that said they agree, they said that their partner wouldn't force her, or that she is free to leave. One of the quotes that came up was, the only thing I would ask is that we sit down and talk about it, And this is why it was easy for me to say, yes, I agree with that statement, and yes, I could leave at any time, which is why now we are not together. The only thing I can do for now is friendship, and maybe in future we might try again. But for now, it's just friendship. Among those that indicated that they disagree, they said that they wouldn't want to leave. And then they also, some participants, some female participants indicated that they feel stuck because of the kids. So having kids with their current partner made them feel like they could not really leave the relationship anytime they wanted to. One of the participants said in an interview, actually, I just think that it's a problem. It's just an issue because we have children. I think for the children, you see. So we can see like some women, staying and feeling stuck in relationship for various reasons. And one here is that they have kids. Campion.
Okay, so for the male participants, the question was, it might make me sad, but my partner is free to leave our relationship anytime she wants. And the responses here, which is quite interesting, are quite similar to from the female participants. In this case, 79% of the men either agreed or strongly agreed with this, and 21% disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement. So for those who did agree, the reason was that they can't force, they felt like they can't force their partner to stay, and that it's her choice at the end of the day to either leave or stay. And one of the quotes from that was, well, if she feels that she no longer wants to be a part of this relationship, I think it is in her best interest that I let her go. It might hurt, but why do I have to force to be in a relationship when she does not feel that she wants to be part of the relationship? So yeah, I think it would be the best way. I would be hurting, but as time goes on, I will be okay. And for the participants who disagreed, only one who seemed a bit confused said disagree because he would want to work things out. So that is, according to that participant, he felt like she wouldn't be exactly free to leave because I would like a fair chance to try and fight for our relationship. And so one of the quotes from those responses was, yeah, if she decides that she is leaving because of a certain situation, it's fine. It means that person was not yours. Let them go. You will find another one. Yes, and sometimes if you decide that a person is leaving you, you're forcing things. You tell her, don't leave, please. You will end up being obsessive, aggressive. You will stalk her, and you will end up doing what things that you should not be doing. So that is one of the most interesting responses from the participants who did disagree. But it was quite interesting that the responses were quite similar for both men and women in terms of like the percentages. Back to you, Kalisha.
Right. So for item 7, my partner does what he wants, even if I don't want him to, was for females. And I'd like to do what I want, even if my partner doesn't want me to, was for males. And so you can see there was a lot of disagreement to this statement, particularly among the women, but that maybe the women that were sampled for the qualitative maybe had slightly more agreeing to this statement than in the quantitative, or that it's been quite a while since they've taken the quantitative survey, so they could have different relationships and have changed the way that they think about the relationship and this particular item. So back to you, Michelle.
Okay, so item number 7 says that my partner does what he wants even when I don't want him to. 35% of participants showed that they agree or strongly agree, and 65% showed that they disagree or strongly disagree. Right? Among those who say that they agreed, the main reasons was that the partner doesn't compromise. He does things sometimes that the participant doesn't agree with. One of the quotes was like, I was like, that is unfair. Like, why he wants me to go, why he wants me to stop going out, but he was still going out. And I was like, why would I stop something that you also do? Why? It does not make sense. Okay, so basically for the participants that agreed, this particular participant in this interview was indicating that it would be unfair for her male partner to have more rights and privileges over her in a relationship. For example, things like going out. So he cannot dictate whether or not she goes out when he goes and does the same thing. For those who stated that they disagree, they said that he or she listened, and they indicated that the partner needs to consult with the participant first. So one of the quotes was, because when I say I do not want something, he does not do it. So we can see that there was a bit of balance between healthy and unhealthy communication among the participants and their partners. So healthy communication being where you really get to talk and understand each other, and unhealthy, which is the latter. Of Campion.
Okay, so for the men, the question was, I like to do what I want, even if my partner doesn't want me to. And quite similar again to the women's responses here. 69% of them disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, and about 31% either agreed or strongly agreed. And for those who did agree, the reason was quite put simply, they're their own person, and so they won't stop doing what they want to do just because their partner asked them to. And one of the quotes from that was, I am my own person, and I still have the old mentality of being a man and being the head of the house. And so I would not limit myself to doing the things I love just because I'm with her at that time. This is, as you can see, it's quite a recurrent theme when it comes to manhood and how men perceive themselves in relation to the power dynamics in relationships. And for those who did disagree, their reasons were they didn't want to make their partners sad, and so they'll try to compromise with their partners. And one of the quotes was, "She gets sad too quickly." So whenever she says the name here, do that, yeah, I'd like say, yeah, okay, even if I haven't like, okay, I'll do it, okay. But the thing that I usually do, I take my own time to do it. So even though they would disagree with, what their partner is asking them to do, they'll kind of still do it, but at their own time, in the interest of trying to find compromise with their partners. Back to you, Kalisha.
Great. So for item 8, you can see here that it's generally consistent. They're disagreeing across men and women, and across all 3 of the interviews. And that the item for item 8 for females was, my partner and I disagree. When my partner and I disagree, he always has the last word. And for males, when my partner and I disagree, I get my way most of the time. And this was interesting too, particularly for females who, because the items are gendered, often the female participant might say, well, no, I actually get my way most of the time, but the item doesn't ask it that way. And so this was something that came up for the female participants. For the next item, item 9, this was quite interesting because you can see that most participants across all 3, and particularly for males in the qualitative, there was a lot of agreement. And this was around, for females asking, my partner always wants to know where I am. And for males, I like to know where my partner is all the time. And I think when this item was originally put in the scale, it was meant to measure some form of kind of surveying behavior, and kind of like the quote at the beginning that I put there, because I really think it captures it, where the participant said, I think it seems like it's asking if my partner is a stalker, but I also think it's asking if he cares. And so those are some interesting findings, and I'll pass it to Michelle to explain more of that. You're on mute, Michelle.
Oh, sorry about that. For this particular item, the females were asked that my partner always wants to know where I am. And then 35% of women said that they disagree or strongly disagree. 65% of women stated that they agree or strongly agree. Among those that agreed, their reasons was mainly for safety reasons, and also that the participant must tell the partner or they will get upset. One of the codes was that, but it's only for safety reasons I have to tell him because of all the things that are happening. Even when I go home, he has to jump in the Uber with me, drop me off, and has to go back because he doesn't trust anybody. Anybody. Since the beginning of the relationship, he's been doing that. So I don't have an issue sharing my location or telling him where I am most of the time because he does the same. So we can see here that this response, women just said they agree just because of security reasons. So in context, like South Africa has quite high rates of gender-based violence, so this would be a code probably alluding to that. And then those who say that they disagree, they say that my partner is okay to not know, likes to know that she is okay. And then the quote was that no, as long as he calls me from my side, he would just ask where I am. He did not ask what I was doing when I'm doing that, as long as I'm okay. So we can see that on this question, the main thing that came up was concern for your partner, and that your partner checking up on you is just probably sometimes a security measure. Campion.
Okay, so from the male participants, the question was, I like to know where my partner is all the time. And the responses are quite overwhelming, with 87% of them agreeing or strongly agreeing with the statement, and only about 13% who disagreed or strongly disagreed with that. And similar to the women's responses, for the men who did agree, they cited mainly reasons of safety and making sure that the partner is not with other men, which is interesting. And one of the quotes there was that the main priority is a safety, especially around this time of the year where women are being abducted, kidnapped, and so on and so forth. So there was a concern, general concern of safety there for their partners as being the main reason why they want to know where they are. Of course, with some of the reasons being trying to find out if they're not with other men. And for those who did disagree, the reasons were that the partner is independent and they felt like they didn't always need to know where their partner is all the time. And also that they did trust their partner, so there was no need to find out if they're with other men, or similar reasons to those who did agree. And one of the quotes is, no, um, it would be like I'm spying on her, or that she needs to be free, She can do whatever in her own time, unless if we agree that we'll meet at a certain time. We must meet because we have agreed to meet, but I do not have to know everything about what she does or whatever. But yeah. So clearly the dissimilar reasons with regards to why they agree or disagree, but 87% of them, which is a very huge number, had either agreed or disagreed with the statement, which is quite telling. So back to you, Kalisha.
Great. Okay, so I'm gonna skip through some of these just in the sake of time, and go and pass it right back to Michelle to go over item 12 and those responses.
Okay, so for item 12, the females were asked, my partner lets me know that I am not his only girlfriend. 15% of women show that they agree or strongly agree, and 85% show that they disagree or strongly disagree. Among those that agreed, it was said the main reason was that she found out more than he told her. So the quote that stood out was, "Ish, what am I going to say? He has not told me. I once just came across it myself on the phone." And then for those who disagreed, they stated that she's the only partner. This would cause a breakup. Um, Someone else said participant would have trust issues. Some of the quotes, and for this one, there were two quotes, was that that's signing his death warrant. And then the second one was, I would always have those doubts of, would he be cheating on me? Like if he didn't come home at 6, he came home at 6:03. What's going on? Like, is he still with her? Is he still seeing her? Like those type of things. So we can just see that this was mainly a question that was talking about respect, and probably to a certain extent just communication and faithfulness among partners, among people in relationships. Yeah, Campion.
Okay, so from the male participants, the question was, I let my partner know she's not the only girlfriend I have or could have. And quite similar to the women's responses there, 81% of them also disagreed or strongly disagreed with the statement, and about 19% agreed and strongly agreed. And for those who did agree, the reasons were basically just being honest and being open in the relationship with their partner. And one of the quotes to illustrate this was, no, the thing is, we talk with that person. I do not cheat on her and she does not cheat on me. But she would say she gives me freedom to do what I want because of the situation at the moment. And then for those who disagreed, they cited reasons that it was disrespectful and then it would cause harm and end the relationship, particularly if they were seeing other partners, as shown by the quote. I mean, why would I tell my partner that I have someone on the other side? I think that would sort of emotional abuse. It would be disrespectful towards her. Why should she know that? I do not think she deserves to know if I have a side chick or whatever. If yeah, I think that would be a way of disrespecting my partner. I do not think it is the right thing to do. Even if I had a side chick, I do not think she deserves to know that. I strongly disagree. Back to you, Kalisha.
Great. So that's kind of the end. This is just the last item of this particular part of the presentation. And so I'm going to ask the audience now to go to Mentimeter, and I want to create a word cloud to see, after hearing the participants' responses, what 3 words come to mind. And so if you can go to that, I will go to the word cloud. And hopefully we can create a word cloud together. Okay, so the link is www. Can you see the menti.com? And then you have to use the code 77060771. Is it working? Okay. some of the words that are coming up are trust, complex, yeah. Communication, safety, respect, balance, masculinity, gender, gender roles, gender. Insight. Inequality, egos, yeah. Men, control, thoughtful, romanticizing control, respect, all right. So I'll leave that up and running. So the code's there. You can keep adding to it if you want throughout the presentation, but I will go back to the presentation. All right. So thanks for participating in that. I think it looks awesome, and I can share that at the end. We can go back and check it out if you want to keep adding to it. And so just to summarize kind of what we went over here, and some of the items and the appraisal of the items, you can see that from this scale that some of the items seem to be pretty confusing or vague. So, you know, the one question around the partner coming over, that this kind of assumes that the partners, the young men and women haven't made plans, and that the one partner is just coming to check on them. But really, you know, this was interpreted that the partner was coming over because they made plans and wasn't just randomly showing up. And then there's differences in interpretations of the items, including, you know, the item around beauty and being too beautiful. And so this was really brought up a lot of conversations around what does beautiful mean, and different interpretations of beautiful. And then, you know, there's double-barreled questions, or questions that seem to be asking multiple things. So the question around needing to know where your partner all the time, particularly in this South African context, that a lot of this centers around safety, but also, you know, might be asking about your partner's kind of surveying or stalking. And then some of the items seem to be making some inappropriate assumptions. So for you know, for item 12, where it's talking about being in another relationship, it kind of assumes that all young people are monogamous and don't have open relationships, and so that it assumes that. And for item 13, which I didn't go over, but my partner expects me to sleep over, that also assumes that participants are having sleepovers. And in some of the interviews, there was some conversations, especially by young women, where they said, you know, they don't really have sleepovers with their partners because their families are pretty strict, and so that's also making that assumption. So we asked participants to also talk about what they would ask, or if there were items missing to capture their relationship dynamics or power dynamics in their relationships. And so I'll pass it to Michelle to kind of walk through some of the suggestions from participants.
Okay, so be more specific or rewording. Some participants made suggestions for some items to be more specific or to change the wording so that it is more understandable. For example, for the item around male participants were uncomfortable if their partner greeted men they knew, They suggested being specific if greeting meant talking or something else. The concept of too beautiful was unclear, and many participants felt that this item was left to interpretation of what beautiful meant. Some of the young women also suggested that the questions also be about their behaviors and not just their partner's behaviors. Campion?
Okay. So with regards to additional questions, some of them were on, they requested that we had questions on control and power. So some of the suggestions to better capture power and control included adding questions about the use of technology, also something like going through each other's phones and relationships, and also asking participants about their beliefs on gender equality. Do you believe in the 50-50 roles in relationships? And questions on whether they would allow their partners to make decisions in the relationship and how much they allow their partners to make decisions, as well as if they're allowed to go out with their friends. However, it's important to note that the issue of not having friends came up quite a few times, particularly from young women who often stated that they don't have friends. Therefore, the question about whether their partners decide for them who to spend time with was irrelevant, because for young women, it is more of a choice to not go out with friends and not have friends. Back to you, Michelle.
So general questions about relationship dynamics, right? Participants felt there should be more general questions about the relationship, such as whether or not your partner takes you out on dates, questions specifically about intimacy, emotional well-being in the relationship, if they were planning to have children with their current partner, about how employment affects the relationship, and about cheating and the consequences of cheating. Catherine?
Okay, and then there are also requests on questions about sexual and health behaviors from participants. And with regards to health and sexual behavior, participants felt that there should be more questions that are specific to kind of like their lived experiences. So for example, participants suggested that asking questions on testing for HIV with their partners, on condom use, or if they talk to each other about their health history, frequency of sexual intercourse with their partners, and if they've ever gotten an infection from their partner and how they handled it. And also, it's basically like how you would react to finding out that your partner gave you an infection. Back to you, Michelle.
Okay, so questions about violence and abuse. Finally, participants discussed that there could be more questions around violence and abuse, such as whether you would ever force your partner to have sex with you if your partner was abusing you, and asking about who in the relationship might have more physical power.
Thank you. So finally, we'll talk a bit about objective 3, which we use the interview guides and also ask participants about how sexual relationship power influence decision-making and sexual health. And starting in September 2020, after we got approved from ethics to do an addendum to do telephonic interviews because of COVID-19, we also asked questions about the impact of COVID-19 and the lockdown. And so we're currently using a grounded theory approach, and a subset of the transcripts will be coded by Michelle and Campion. And we discussed this kind of on a regular basis. And so we're discussing on a weekly basis, and that given I am obviously white and Canadian and cannot speak to the lived realities of Black South African youth, I am constantly doing self-reflection, and in order to capture the lived realities of young people, I'm using this data. We will also be using insight from this workshop and other workshops we are planning with youth in the community, and we're constantly looking at the themes, and we're hoping that at the end of the presentation you can also provide any feedback on thoughts that you might have. Doing these word cloud things are helpful too, to kind of look at the themes and what other folks think. And that hopefully eventually will lead to building a larger conceptual framework to understand sexual relationship power dynamics and how they influence young people in South Africa today. And so we're looking at what the data that we're finding tells us about young people's relationships. And so we've been collating the codes into emerging themes and are presenting them visually. So I'll pass it over to Campion and Michelle to discuss some of the emerging themes around youth's relationship dynamics.
Okay, so across the data, across the data, there was a general current theme about patriarchy, and that was embedded in the responses from male participants, especially, and often it was used as a reason or justification behind the participant responses, perceptions, and actions. And there were many conversations, especially among young men, both in Soweto and Durban, around what it means to be a man, as you have seen from the data that we've gone through. So for example, one participant in Durban stated that, this is a quote, "I'm my own person and I still have the old mentality of being a man," if you remember this quote, "and being the head of the house. And, so I would not limit myself to doing the things I love just because I'm with her at that time." So as a result of this, there were so many gendered notions that were brought up in several responses. And so therefore, gender norms and expectations around marriage were often discussed by both young men and women. And many participants stated that the items felt like they were for married people. I mean, you saw some of the responses where, participants would say, "We're not married, so it's not like we're supposed to do that. We're not married, etc., etc." And so many participants, as they felt that it was for married people, one young man from Durban stated that, and this is a quote again, "But as you know, I'm Black and I'm a Zulu man, and that is what I'm used to, even though I'm not married to her as yet, but I do expect her to do things like make me breakfast when I wake up, when I'm with her, or if she's ironing her clothes as well, not because I have to go somewhere and she has to iron for me, because if she is busy with it, she might as well iron my clothes as well," for example. Back to you, Michelle.
All right. So within the context of culture and tradition, there were many discussions of love and intimacy by participants, which is kind of to be expected because I mean, this was kind of measuring relationship power. So it was in the context of relationships. Within the relationship, a number of important themes were discussed frequently, including respect, trust, control, and finances. In previous slides that we've already kind of gone through, we saw the participants talking and touching on these issues of finances. Like for example, there was a slide where the participant was like, okay, because he's the one who has the money in this relationship, so he has the final say. So we can already see the power of money and control among other issues. To many participants, trust was an important aspect of their relationship. For example, one young man in Soweto stated, "You see, when you trust your partner, that way love grows, and in that way you also become happy and you don't worry about other people that much." Participants also talked about respecting or disrespecting each other. And this often came up when talking about communicating, compromising, and being reciprocal in the relationship. Control in the relationship was discussed in relation to the impact on decision making, um, feeling obligated to do things, and manipulation in the relationship. So, like, I mean, in a lot of the interviews that I personally conducted, you could easily tell between a very healthy relationship and a very unhealthy relationship simply by, how some of the items were looking to measure, certain aspects, such as feeling obligated to do things and the manipulation aspect. That was like very clear in the participants' responses. For example, an example would be when one woman stated that because it is something, even when I'm doing the washing, I'm tired or I'm preparing his food, I would finish everything that I'm doing and prepare food for myself. And you will find that you will find that I need to stop. I will prepare it, for him. So, there's a sense of obligation to, fulfill certain roles simply because you're a woman, and all of that. So those type of themes, they were very evident, and in the participants response. Kalisha.
Thank you. So we're trying to capture the data in different ways. And so we have that graphic that you just saw, and then this one here, which shows that at each kind of level of the ecological model, so personal, relational, family, and culture, that these all interact and influence young people's relationships, dynamics, and power in relationships. And then finally, we're going to talk about some of the participants' thoughts on the impacts of COVID-19 on their relationship. And so I'll pass it back to Campion to share some of those thoughts.
Okay. So many participants stated that the lockdown did not really affect their relationship or have an impact on their relationship. And this was especially true for the partners who lived close to each other. I mean, quite obvious in this case. Um, but participants were mostly able to stay in touch and keep contact with their partners through social media, particularly video chats and messaging. And this was mostly useful during the most strictest lockdown stages, stage 5, for example. And for some participants, this was easy to manage, as participants pointed out how the lockdown helped them work on communication, or better communication with their partners. For example, one participant stated that, in quotes, during lockdown, there were no longer opportunities for us to go work or school. So my main focus, even when I woke up early in the morning, I will say, you know what, let me do ABC. But number one priority as I wake up, touch my phone and greet her. However, for others, it was a challenge as the lockdown measures restricted travel and thereby complicating their routines with their partners. For example, the participant did say, in quotes, it has impacted our relationship, my relationship, because the first step before it was stated as level 5, they said we must go for 2 weeks. And after 2 weeks, it was extended for almost 30 days. And in those 30 days, without seeing her, it was very, very, very challenging. We only had to speak via social media, and not being able to spend time with her, seeing her face live and being next to her, it was very, very challenging. So it had like mixed responses for both people who thought it was an opportunity for them to improve their communication and that they use social media, and those who felt like it was a disruption to their entire routines with their partners. Back to you, Kalisha. That's Michelle, actually. Sorry.
All right. So some participants discussed how they felt the lockdown brought them a little bit closer to each other, and it improved their communication, or it allowed them to have a needed break from each other. For example, like one woman stated that they grew stronger because, like, we need to have like a break because we did need some time apart. So, I mean, some people were not really affected by lockdown. It actually, was more of an advantage than a disadvantage. Other issues that participants brought up in discussing COVID-19 included job security. For example, one young man discussed how he lost his job due to COVID, and this resulted in a lot of boredom that made it challenging to do nice things for his partner. For example, he was not able to maybe like get her gifts or just do, normally things that he would be able to do for her. The same participant talked about similar instances with his friends who are now struggling to provide for their children. Participants also talked about the impact of the pandemic on high rates of violence. For when being asked about the relevance of the scale items on a scale of 1 to 10, one young woman stated that I can perhaps say 8 because, hey, we have seen on several occasions many people who come here, especially now during lockdown, we see women getting abused, you see. So we can see the different impacts on COVID on individuals and their relationships, you know, some being positive that it brought them closer, some there's no impact. However, for some, we can see that there is a highlight on financial constraints and also the violence in context in South Africa. So yeah, thank you, Kalisha.
Thank you. So as you can see that there was quite a lot of, like Michelle said, there was a lot of diversity in the impacts of COVID-19. And so this is the last slide here, and the implications of this research. The results of this research are not a one-off. This project is building off a program that is continuously investing in youth-engaged research and knowledge translation and exchange that we hope can be adapted and scaled for other programs. And together, these interpretations and discussions that are stemming from my dissertation research will be used to make recommendations about best practices in measuring sexual relationship power equity among youth who are disproportionately affected by HIV and gender-based violence. And given that validation is an ongoing process, the results from the study can be used to develop a revised scale that reflects the current ways in which power dynamics function within the relationships of young men and women in modern day South Africa. And we're hoping that insights from these data can produced from this project can inform important research questions and priority areas related to gender, relationships, and sexual and reproductive health and rights that are essential for supporting the health of South Africans across the life course. So I just want to say thank you so much for everyone here for attending, to the funders who have supported this work, my supervisors, all the participants of the Ayazazi study, the study investigators, and staff members who have committed to amplifying the voices and priorities of young people in sexual and reproductive health. So thank you all. And if you have any questions, please feel free to add them in the chat, or feel free to raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask questions. And so thank you once again, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now.
Thank you very much, Kalisha, Campion, and Michelle. Wonderful presentation. I haven't seen any questions on the chat, but maybe if you can just give it another 5 minutes. If there's anyone who would like to ask a question or comment, this is the time. And should we not have that, we can just maybe close it off. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amanda. I've got just a comment. Thank you so much to Campion, Kailisha, and the colleague. Sorry, I forgot her name. Anyway, Michelle. Yes, thank you, Michelle. I just wanted to congratulate you, Kalisha, in the way in which you have used the scale. We have used the scale before in other projects as part of the Stepping Stones project. Our colleagues are on this call. We used the scale when we did the randomized control trial pre-post in the Eastern Cape here in South Africa. And I think you've taken this to another level. I like the way in which you have asked the participants how they answered the questions and what they thought, and you've looked at their interpretations or possibly interpretations or the actual interpretations of the questions, because that really helps us as scientists in the field of studying sexual relationship power dynamics to adapt the scale further. I mean, the stuff that you've come up with, the realization that because the scale was developed for a population of married couples, actually there are gaps in terms of younger samples, single people who are still living with parents who may not have the same liberties, for example, that older men and women have. And so the expressions of power in those relationships may be different. So we need to think about how we measure gender power dynamics in younger samples, which may be different from older samples. But also you correct about the stuff about agency, where sometimes the answer to us as researchers might seem to be the undesirable answer, but in fact, the participants may be answering from a different point of view, a point that says, I am doing this because I want to, not because my partner wants me to do it. But we may have asked it because we thought that it was part of relationship control. One of the things that also strikes me, and I think we need to also continue to engage with this question, is the question of understanding the meaning of words. So when we say your partner doesn't like it when you look beautiful, what does beautiful mean? Because in all honesty, beautiful is subjective. So we need to think about those and what the participants may have thought. And we translate it when we use it in our context. We translated it in the Stepping Stones RCT. We encourage people to translate tools such as this, but still, translation is not perfect, and still there can be so much that is lost in meaning in translation. And those are some of the things that that you've brought to the fore to us today. Thank you so much. It really gets me thinking about a lot of things, and I look forward to more engagements with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. That it's always, the work that you and your team have done with Stepping Stones has been so influential in not only this work, but just generally my career path and something that I was introduced to early on in my learnings of health sciences. And I think, it's so important. And, I agree that that work, is now a bit older, and how are we still capturing that construct in today, and when so many things are changing and relationship dynamics are changing. One of the things one of my colleagues the other day was saying about one of the questions relating to, like, do you get upset if you go check on your partner and she's not there? If this skill was originally developed in the early 2000s, then that was a time when maybe folks didn't really have cell phones, and they weren't constantly letting each other know where they are. And so that might be more common for someone to just show up at your house to see if you're there. But in today's world, that is pretty uncommon, where we're not, telling people or making plans to come over with all of the technologies that we have.
Thank you very much, Alicia. I still haven't seen any questions in the chat box, but maybe if I can just confirm that the session was recorded and you will share it with us.
Yeah, it's being recorded, and I can
okay, all right then. Yes.
Any other comments or questions? I see that Angela commented that she's interested in the findings about the lack of the impact of COVID-19 on relationships. So how are we interpreting those findings? Yeah, I mean, it was a bit surprising to me, but I don't know if Campion or Michelle, you have any thoughts about that in terms of the lack of impacts that some of the participants have been saying.
Hi. So from my side, it wasn't something that really shocked me, because I obviously expected that the lockdown was going to have an impact on a lot of people's relationships, but it didn't quite bring out the impact on the power dynamics themselves, clearly for me. But I think there might be some information, if we had to probe a little bit more into those kinds of things, and information on what really transpired during the COVID-19, because the information we have is just that, it affected communication, But then as to how the communication affected the relationship, like in-depth information of that is not quite clear. So I think it's not shocking to me, but I think there might be more information which may be explored with maybe another study or further from that.
Yeah. Michelle, do you have any thoughts?
I would just say that maybe, okay, this is a bit far-fetched, but anyway, the first thing that just came to my mind is maybe there wasn't much impact, in terms of lockdown, because maybe people were just living their lives normally. Like maybe nothing changed for some people in some communities. People were still, traveling. I had an interview with a female participant, and she stated that, look, I took the risk of getting caught by the cops and getting arrested to go and see my partner, you know. So I think maybe that could also kind of explain why, for some relationships there was no impact there, because people were seeing each other anyway. When they were like, hard luck does that hope, people were like, I'm going to date. So I don't know. That's just what I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it sounded like from the interviews that I've read too, that some of the participants lived in the same community, and so were able to see each other throughout. There were other participants that have been in a long distance relationship with their partner for quite a long time, and so the lockdown itself didn't really change much for them. But I also know, like I'm in some of the more recent interviews that I've been reading, and I haven't added some of these quotes to this presentation yet, that there's been, there was quite a lot of impact on financially, and we kind of started later on in the interviews probing a bit more about that financial aspect of COVID, and how that might have influenced the relationship, and how, the job insecurities and loss of income influenced relationships as well. Any other last questions?
Oh, I still don't see anything.
Maybe what I'll do before we head out, if there's nothing else, I'll just quickly share the final word cloud with everyone, and thank you again for participating in that. So, we're hoping to get a few of these at different presentations that we're doing, and we'll be doing some work with an adolescent community advisory board next week, and getting them to help us build some of these word clouds. So this is the one that we made today. So I think, it's pretty beautiful, but also, interesting, and helps us really understand the audience's perceptions of this work. And so I just want to, again, thank everyone for participating and joining today. And yeah, I will, if there's no other questions and comments, I will end there.
Thank you so much, colleagues.
Great. Thank you. Maybe if Michelle and Campion, if you want to just stay on for a sec, and then we'll let everyone else enjoy the rest of their day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Right, I'm going to just ask these people to leave. Move. Bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Great. Thank you both. I just wanted to just say thank you, and see how did that go for you both?
was good. I think it was was okay. Just like we we practiced. I think it went well.
Just like yeah, I think it went well. I switched off my video because it got a little bit too much because I was like, okay, what do you do on camera? Do you like smile? So I was like, okay, if I'm not talking, I'm just gonna remove it. But I think it went really well. The feedback was really great, and I think it sparked an interesting conversation because I'm seeing people drop some comments here. You know, like uh, Ume Jasmine says, what interested me is that lockdown increased violence in many studies, but it did not have any impact among your participants. And then someone says only 1/3 of participants reported making more than 1,001 rands per month, with men significantly more likely to report higher income than women. Interesting finding.
Oh, is
So, I
that?
mean, mm,
When did I present that?
no, I think people were just putting down their comments
Yeah.
because these were comments at 5:28.
Right. No, but I'm just
Yeah,
wondering
so,
if that was somewhere in the presentation because that's
no,
definitely the
no, I think people were just engaging.
yeah.
Yeah. I think people were engaging because here they're saying that we didn't find any violence among the participants that we interviewed, but other studies showed that there was an increase in violence. And also, this person is talking about, I think they're commenting on, because we did speak about loss of income.
Hmm.
Only 1/3 of participants reported making 1,000 and 1,601 is not a lot of money. Oh my word. So that's quite interesting. I think they're just trying to also engage on the aspect that, lockdown had like a financial knock on participants.
Yeah, Michelle, I actually just I coded one of your interviews yesterday where the participant talked a lot about the financial impacts of COVID, and it was pretty interesting. I didn't add any quotes to the presentation, but I think that that conversation was yeah, very insightful.
Yeah. I think lockdown kind of, impacted people differently according to how you took it. If that makes any sense. Because like I'm saying, some people were told to stay at home. They're like, we are not staying at home. Um, People, I think I discussed this. Did I discuss this with you before about how, people kind of felt a bit of oppression? And this is like conversation from my circles and people I've been talking to. People kind of felt a little bit like oppressed all over again. Like, and people didn't like it. They're like, oh my gosh, why is the government trying to control us? I think they called it a fascist government.
Fascist, yeah.
Fascist. Yeah, there was one lady talking about a fascist government. I didn't even know that was a word until today. So I was like, people feel this way, and it's so interesting. Sorry, I'm even just off topic, but anyway.
No, it's fine.
Yeah. But it was a great presentation. Thank you for the opportunity.
No, thank you both. It's so much better to present with the two of you than just if I was presenting this all by myself. It'd be so boring.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so yeah, next week we'll meet again on Wednesday, and we'll go over the workshop for the ACAB on Friday next week. So I've mostly made that presentation, but yeah, we can just go through it and see if there's anything else you want to add, and maybe Campion. I don't know if Pumla and class want to join for that meeting on Wednesday, just to kind of go through what we'll be doing on Friday, but if they're available, they definitely can.
Okay. I'll try. Yeah, I'll talk to them tomorrow. I'll see if I can talk to them tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah.
For the ACAP presentation, for those of us, because I know I'll be joining virtually, and you, Kalisha, will also be joining virtually. How's that gonna work? Because I think they'll be outside. It's just gonna be like a little computer or phone in front of the.
Yeah, I guess we'll have to talk to Pumla in class about how that might work, like if they have a laptop or something that they can bring to the meeting, that they can show, and then the participants will need to have their phones because I'm doing the whole presentation on Mentimeter, so like it's mostly interactive, the whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think maybe that's an important aspect because usually the meetings are outside and there's usually like so much space between the participants or the ACAB members. So maybe, I don't know. But I guess Pumla and class might have a proposition for that.
Yeah, we'll have to ask them what they think. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your evening and have a good weekend, and we'll talk next week.
All right, thanks.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Bye.